So from October 29th until November 12th, 2020, I deadlifted up until a max every single day for 15 days in a row. Now, I obviously don't recommend maxing out on the deadlift every single day, but hopefully there are some useful takeaways that you can actually apply to your own training, at least conceptually. Now, I know someone's going to be like, why did you do this? And I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that question, and perhaps that's been part of the reason why it's taken me so long to make this video. So even though there's no why, I don't have a good reason, and I'm not saying to do this, I do think it is sort of going to be interesting to take a look back on how things went. Now, two important training concepts are specificity and intensity. Now, specificity is just how similar is the movement you're doing to the goal that you're trying to accomplish. So if you want to drive up your deadlift 1 rep max, a deadlift 1 rep max is as specific as possible. Intensity is the percentage of 1 rep max that you are using. So 100% intensity is 100% of the load on the bar. 90% is 90% of the load on the bar. And so the most specific thing for driving up your deadlift 1 rep max is a deadlift 1 rep max. So does this mean you should just always max out? Not necessarily. As you'll see, this is not really a very effective way of training in a lot of cases. Now, knowledgeable peeps might be saying, hey Geoff, what about the Bulgarian method? That's a thing, right? It is a thing, but it's often used for the snatch and the clean and jerk, which are inherently lighter lifts and less taxing. It's often used for the squat as well, which again is just overall, generally speaking, easier to recover from than the deadlift. If you tell someone you're squatting every day to a max, yeah, that's a thing. If you tell people you're deadlifting every day to a max, you're going to get some weird looks. However, there's also the concept of recovery. I only had 24 hours in between maxing out. It just wasn't enough time to actually recover. I felt like sometimes my performance was up, sometimes it was down. It was almost like zigzagging back and forth because I would be recovered and have a good day, and then the good day would be heavier, and so it would tax me more, and so I'd have a bad day because I was fatigued the next day. But because I was fatigued, I couldn't generate as much force and fatigue myself as well. So it was going up and down. And honestly, if you deadlift every 2 days, I would say that is viable, but truly maxing out on the deadlift every single day, it's just too much. You also have to take into account variety. If you're always doing the same movement, yes, you are practicing the movement and it's very specific to what you want to do, but you're always stressing the body in the exact same way, and overuse injuries are certainly a real thing. Now, I didn't get injured, which was nice. A lot of people actually expected this to happen, but injury is certainly a possibility when you are working with maximum weights and you're always doing the same lift. This is why conjugate style training, where you're always rotating the lift and doing max efforts on different lifts, is a thing. But while I didn't get a formal injury or snap my shit up, I definitely didn't feel good.
I don't feel good.
And I was getting signs and symptoms of overreaching.
Give me some try.
And this is actually pretty amazing because I was only adding in like maybe 2 or 3 hard reps per day. The warm-ups weren't that taxing. It was really only the stuff above 85% of 1 rep max that was actually very strenuous. So putting yourself in this fight or flight state by truly maxing out is something that can absolutely catch up with you. It's not just about the overall volume of work that you're doing. You can absolutely get disrupted sleep, irritability, changes in hunger, all these other signs and symptoms just from maxing out. Just finishing day 7, and my central nervous system is fired up. It's also worth noting that my technique was absolutely not ideal on a lot of these heavier lifts. If you're working with 70-80% or even 90% of 1 rep max, you can use that to develop and work on your technique. I actually felt like my technique got worse over the 2 weeks or so, just because it's a max effort. And so if it's a truly max effort, you're not really able to think during the lift and make adjustment. It's just sort of a max effort. And so part of the reason why I've sort of delayed making this video is that I'm not proud of how a lot of these reps looked. You know, maybe if I was better recovered and, you know, just was a little bit fresher, I would have been able to focus on what I was doing. I think working up to a single at 90% is totally different from a true maximum 100% lift. So if you're gonna do this high frequency, high intensity training, I would set a cap in terms of the bar speed. So if it slows beyond a certain point, it could be an RPE cap, could be a rep speed cap, but you need something in place to stop you from truly maxing out. Some of these reps were taking 8, 10 seconds to lock out. The longest rep took 16.2 seconds from floor to lockout. That is horrendous, especially when you have to come back the very next day and max out again. In a very real way, this felt like I was just surviving. As for the rest of my training, it was fairly similar with the exception of cutting out everything else for lower body. Not a single motherfucking squat was in sight. I just had no desire to do that at all. I guess it was theoretically possible to do some squats as well. I just didn't. Like, after you max out on deadlifts and you maxed out the day before and the day before and the day before, and you have to max out the day after and after and after, you don't want to do any squats. I also thought it was pretty interesting that I could get a very good idea, based on how the warm-ups were moving, how heavy I was going to be able to go that day. For the sumo deadlift, for me, it's weakest off of the floor, but then also at lockout. And so if the weights were flying earlier in the session, you know, 60%, 70%, 80%, it was going to be a good day. If things were moving slow, if things felt sluggish, it wasn't going to be a good day. And this was pretty much a 1-to-1 correlation. I don't think I had a single day where warm-ups were slow and then, like, suddenly the working weights were great, or vice versa. Now, was there any muscular growth, development, hypertrophy from this workout plan? Well, first of all, it's a dumb fucking plan for hypertrophy. 1 rep axis is just not a good thing to do. Plus 2 weeks is a pretty short time. But I did actually feel like my traps grew. Yeah, my traps out of everything. The thing that is absolutely not the prime mover. You would think it might be quads or glutes or maybe hamstrings or adductors, spinal erectors. Traps. So how much did this super awesome, very not smart training plan put on my deadlift? Nothing. Nothing at all, right? Like, it was trending upwards a little bit, and then it went back down when fatigue caught up. And then I tested my max like 6 days or a week later, and it was down even more. You would think like, oh, super compensation. No, right? No, just like the fatigue stuck around even longer. And then like I was out of practice with the lift as well by that point, I guess. And like it just, yeah, it was, I was weaker by the super compensation stage. So, yeah, no upside. This was dumb. Don't do this. Not a good way to plan your training. I don't know why I did this. I guess just sort of on a whim. But yeah. And I guess the 2 main takeaways were that I didn't get injured and that you can deadlift more frequently than you think. Not every day, especially not to a max. But if you think you can only deadlift once per week, you're probably wrong. Because honestly, after this, deadlifting 3 days per week for submaximal efforts feels like a fucking luxury. So in summary, don't do this. This was dumb. Extreme workouts are usually counterproductive in the long term. If you want to know more about actually properly structuring your training plan, you can grab a copy of my book. It has full templates. It teaches you how to balance volume, intensity, frequency, RPE, all these things in order to get the most out of your training. Unlike this. Like the video, I do appreciate that. No pressure to like it or do anything. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.